behavior. Confusion surrounded law enforcement's responsibility to find and question him. Crooks operated in an unsecured area, as situational information about him was both delayed and limited. Former President Trump took the stage even as local law enforcement were escalating efforts to find a suspicious person. Evidence shows that in crucial moments after local police over radio reported that Crooks had a long gun on the roof, and in a period of less than 30 seconds before shots were fired, the Secret Service could not process the information fast enough to pull the former president from the stage. I am going to do something here. I think, Lucas and Sarah, that we believe the same thing. All we had to know, if we knew there was a suspicious person out there, and this, I think once you listen to this today, you're going to find out, why in the world would you let former President Trump go out onto that platform if you weren't sure it was secure? That's the whole purpose of why the Secret Service was there. Thankfully, President Trump survived this near-death experience. Mr. Comprador did not. Exercising his patriotic right to participate in our democracy, he was not able to complete that day. And I want you to know something. The Comprador family, on Saturday morning, July 13th, were so excited to leave their home in Sarver as a family, Mr. Comprador, his wife Helen, and their 2 daughters, to go to Butler, Pennsylvania to watch our candidates speak. 4 people drove over that morning. 3 people went home that night. Mr. Comprador lost his life that day. That is totally unacceptable in America. Today's hearing brings forward 3 witnesses who were at the rally aiding the Secret Service effort on July 13th. These men are the first individuals who helped provide security at the July 13th rally to testify before Congress. They are here to give their accounts of what they saw and experienced both at the rally and in the planning process leading up to it, the key being the planning process leading up to it. I do expect they will share enlightening information about mistakes and regrets, but also about heroic and selfless actions taken by local law enforcement that day. It's important to remember that these men and their units were not in charge of July 13th, nor did they have a hand in designing the Secret Service security plan. Those responsibilities belonged to the Secret Service. These men answered a call to play a role protecting the public and our political process, even though providing security at a political rally is not their usual line of work. Our country already knows what happened at 6/11 on Sunday, July 13th in Butler. The law enforcement professionals with us today are here to tell us about specific actions and events that led to this outcome. Testifying today, we also have the medical examiner who performed the autopsy on Thomas Crooks. He is testifying to answer questions about how Crooks died and to hopefully put to rest some theories and doubts that often seem to follow high-profile violent events. Finally, our panel includes a distinguished retired Secret Service agent who played no role in the events of July 13th and is on this panel to provide insights into Secret Service protocols and practices. After this hearing, the task force will use what we have learned from today's testimonies, additional documents, and local law enforcement resources in the next phase of our investigation. In this next phase, we will be seeking answers about the Secret Service's questionable decisions regarding planning, resources, and the apparent lack of leadership that led to complacency and vulnerability on July 13th. Since the task force added its first staff in August, following a unanimous 416-0 vote by this House of Representatives to establish this panel, we have led a thorough, fact-based, and bipartisan investigation. Our duty, as expressed in the resolution establishing the task force, is to investigate and present a report making recommendations by December 13th that address the Secret Service's security failures. This task force is fully on track to fulfill our duty. This hearing is not our last word or conclusion. It is a window for the public to see our important ongoing work. Finally, I want to take a moment to address former President Trump, who after September 15th has now decided in two assassination attempts, he's going to return to the Butler Farm Show on October the 5th. I want to personally commend the former president and his family for the incredible strength they have shown since July 13th. I can't imagine anybody looking at this and looking at it, and please separate the politics from all of this. This is a United States citizen running for a political office. He has a wife, he has children, he has grandchildren. Nowhere in our whole scope of government can we accept the fact that these people jeopardize or put their life in danger by running for a public office? It's totally unacceptable. I think he's owed a lot better than what he got that day, and also we're going to be looking at Florida. But we've been warned about these clear threats to his safety twice. It's the obligation of this Congress, this administration, and public servants at all levels of government to stand against those who would use violence to interfere with our elections. Every American should be outraged, regardless of who they intend to support, by these attempts to nullify their votes through violence. We use ballots, not bullets, to make a determination of who should serve. Today's hearing is the task force's latest attempt to seek accountability and answers on what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, and to restore the faith, trust, and confidence the American people deserve. One last thing before I recognize Ranking Member. Jason Crow and I have I think for whatever reason, we're put in the same place at the same time for the right reasons. I am going to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from Leader Scalise granting us permission to have one of our witnesses testify remotely today. And without objection, okay, so ordered. I now recognize the distinguished Ranking Member from Colorado, Mr. Crow, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman, and I want to start by thanking all of the witnesses for coming here willingly on your own time to provide really important information for this panel and for the American people as we seek answers that they need. Political violence has no place in our democracy, period. We must be united in our belief as Americans, not as Republicans or Democrats, that political disagreement is settled through rigorous debate, not violence. That is why this task force's investigation and today's hearing are so important. Since the establishment of this task force just 2 months ago, I have worked closely with Chairman Kelly to ensure that this investigation is and remains bipartisan. The members of this task force and our staffs are coordinating closely to ensure that we establish the facts of the security failures of July 13th so that we can help ensure that those failures never happen again. It is our hope that today's hearing will provide the public with critical insight into our progress. The Secret Service is a critical dual mission. First, the protection and investigations to ensure the safety and security of protectees, key locations, and events of national significance, and the investigation of crimes against the U.S. financial system committed by criminals around the world. Its protection mission operates, by the Secret Service's own admission, on a zero-fail mentality, as it must. While numerous other state and local law enforcement agencies were present leading up to and during the July 13th event, the Secret Service is ultimately responsible for the safety of its protectees, a mission that the Secret Service has had full-time since 1902. It is clear that the Secret Service failed on July 13th. It is also impossible to ignore, however, the fact that the world has changed dramatically since the Secret Service first took over full-time presidential protection in 1902. Political events are bigger. There is a significantly greater number of protectees. Access to information about protectees' movements are more accessible to the public. Times have clearly changed. The Secret Service must be expected to accomplish its zero-fail protection mission without any errors. But Congress must also ensure that the Secret Service has the resources it needs to accomplish that mission. It has become apparent since July 13th that the Secret Service is stretched too thin. It takes years to create a Secret Service agent qualified to protect the president or a former president. Right now, there are simply not enough Secret Service agents. As a result, the Secret Service must rely heavily on Department of Homeland Security agents and other federal agencies whose responsibility may not primarily be personnel protection. The Secret Service also relies heavily on local and state law enforcement, particularly with large-scale events like July 13th. In the first part of this investigation, it has become clear that local law enforcement played a critical role in security on July 13th, and efforts by individual local law enforcement officers may have saved lives and prevented a far greater tragedy. It is also clear, however, that the communication between the Secret Service and local and state partners was disjointed and unclear. For example, there was no single command post for all law enforcement on site to receive and relay information. Given how critical the partnership is between the Secret Service and local and state law enforcement agencies, clear lines of communication are crucial. The Secret Service must do better. This task force has a solemn, urgent responsibility: uncover the failures and help stop them from being repeated. The American people deserve clear answers about what happened on July 13th. This hearing will provide the first pieces of what we learned, but make no mistake, this investigation is still early days and there is much more to do. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses and learning more about their perspectives on what happened, what went wrong, and how we might prevent these failures moving forward. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
I'll now introduce our witnesses. Today we are joined by Mr. Edward Lenz, who serves as the commander of the Butler County Emergency Service Unit. Commander Lenz is also a sergeant with the Adams Township Police Department. On July 13th, while working for Butler ESU, Commander Lenz was stationed in the local command post at the campaign rally site. Next, we have Mr. Drew Blasco, who is a patrolman for Butler Township Police Department. Patrolman Blasco is also a sniper team assistant leader for Butler County ESU. On July 13th, while working for Butler Township, Patrolman Blasco was stationed with a Secret Service agent where former President Trump's motor car arrived. Our third witness is Mr. John Harold, who is a lieutenant for the Pennsylvania State Police. Lieutenant Harold was the officer in charge for the Pennsylvania State Police on July 13th. Next, we have Mr. Patrick Sullivan, who has served over 40 years in federal law enforcement. He began his career at 18, working for the FBI. Then he joined the Secret Service as a special agent, where he served 23 years, retiring as a supervisor. Though he is retired and was not present on July 13th, he served on the Secret Service Presidential Protection Division for 4 years and conducted numerous advances, both domestic and foreign. His expertise will be helpful in context of how the Secret Service works with local law enforcement to ensure the safety of all protectees. Last but not least, we have Dr. Ariel Goldschmidt testifying remotely. Dr. Goldschmidt is the Chief Medical Examiner for the Allegheny County Office of the Medical Examiner. Dr. Goldschmidt conducted the autopsy of the would-be assassin Thomas Matthew Crooks. We appreciate all of you for being here today. Before recognizing the witnesses for their testimony, I would like to remind them that their oral testimony is restricted to 5 minutes in length. If you see the light turn red in front of you, it means your 5 minutes have concluded, and you should try to wrap up your testimony as quickly as possible. Will the witnesses please stand and raise their right hands? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that all the witnesses answered in the affirmative. I now recognize Commander Lenz for his 5 minutes opening remarks. Commander, thank you for being here today.
Good morning. My name is Edward Lenz. I'm a patrol sergeant for the Adams Township Police Department in Butler County, Pennsylvania, and a commander for the Butler County Emergency Services Unit. I was the commander of the local tactical units operating at the Butler, PA presidential rally on July 13th. Butler ESU was initially requested to assist the U.S. Secret Service at the Butler rally by providing 2 counter-assault teams and a quick reaction force. Later, 2 sniper teams were added to that request during the planning process. We were assisted at the Butler rally by the Beaver County Emergency Services Unit, the Washington County Regional SWAT Team, and pre-hospital staff from Allegheny Health Network. Beaver ESU provided a 2nd armored vehicle with a counter-assault team and 2 police snipers. Washington Regional SWAT provided 4 tactical operators and 2 police snipers, and Allegheny Health Network provided an EMS physician and a paramedic to assist the tactical EMS providers already embedded with our teams. Across the 2 counter-assault teams, the quick reaction force, the 3 sniper teams, and support personnel, we provided a total manpower of 44 persons, exceeding the number requested by the Secret Service. At no point during the planning process was Butler County ESU asked to secure the AGR complex, nor the perimeter surrounding that area. At no point during the planning process was Butler ESU asked to deploy a sniper team to the roof of the AGR complex, and at no point in our operations plan did we ever say that we would deploy a sniper team to the roof of the AGR complex. From their positions inside the AGR building, the snipers were not able to see the roof where the shooter was located, and again, that was not within their area of responsibility. Butler County is our home, Some of those attending that rally were our neighbors, our friends, our families, our coworkers, and in fact, my wife was one of the paramedics embedded with our team at the rally, and she provided treatment to those that had been shot. Each and every team member took their job serious and their responsibilities serious. Illustrative of this, a member of the QRF had observed several suspicious persons in the area of the AGR building, one of whom ended up being the shooter. This information was relayed to uniformed patrol officers assigned to post along the perimeter and was discussed with the snipers posted inside the AGR building. A Beaver County sniper in the AGR building was able to take a photograph of the suspicious male while he sat near the AGR building, and again later saw him using a rangefinder pointing towards the stage. And this information was promptly reported to the Pennsylvania State Police in the Secret Service Command Center, the Butler County Sheriff's Office, and the Butler Township Police Department. Had these officers not picked up on the suspicious behavior, we likely would not have known anything was wrong until shots were fired. Prior to those shots being fired, an operator from Butler ESU had exited the Red Barn behind the stage and was monitoring the AGR area due to the suspicious person reports. When shots rang out, he was able to quickly identify where the shots were coming from. He observed the shooter, he shouldered his rifle, he acquired his target, and he fired one round at the shooter, which caused the shooter to recoil and briefly fall out of sight. He did this less than 6 seconds after shots began, using his short barrel M4 platform rifle chambered in .556 with an EOTech weapon sight at a distance of approximately 110 yards. He remained on target, prepared to engage with additional rounds, and as the shooter slowly came back into sight, a Secret Service counter sniper fired a round striking the shooter, ending the active threat. No other rounds were fired by the shooter after he was engaged by the Butler ESU operator. Since July 13th, we have cooperated with multiple investigations, and our members have been interviewed by the Pennsylvania State Police, the FBI, the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, the Secret Service Mission Assurance Investigators, the Homeland Security Independent Review Panel, Senator Grassi's office, and of course, this House Task Force. We have done so without subpoena, and I am here today without being subpoenaed. Butler County ESU has nothing to hide, and we will continue to cooperate, as I believe the American people deserve the truth. The events that occurred at the Butler rally are nothing short of a tragedy. Evil will always be a threat, and we must continually review our own actions, adjust our operations, and constantly strive to achieve perfection, though we will never achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commander Lenz. Appreciate it. And I know how heartfelt this has been for you and how gut-wrenching it has been for you, because we talked right after this. That's the purpose of today's hearing.
You've been listening to a portion of a House hearing investigating the July 13th assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Our Angie Gonzalez and our Taylor Popolars join us now from Washington. Thank you both for joining us and giving us additional context to this hearing. Angie, let's begin with you. Since the assassination attempt on July 13th, a lot has already happened. The Secret Service admitting wrongdoing, the U.S. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle resigning, and new safety standards have been put in place, and more funding has been put in place as well. What is the goal of the hearing after all this?
Well, it's really forward-looking, Bree. They're looking to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Certainly, they weren't anticipating that there would be a second assassination attempt on Trump's life, of course, in Florida earlier this month. But all the information that we're getting from this task force, what we heard from the Senate committee's interim report yesterday, as well as the Secret Service's own mission assurance investigation, has a similar thread. They say that there were multiple operational and communications failures and, frankly, a lack of diligence by the Secret Service in their planning for that July 13th event. And of course, they're trying to look for possible changes to the U.S. Secret Service structure and planning in order to better accommodate the current threat level that they are seeing. Bree?
Thank you, Angie. And Taylor, we are hearing from many members of local law enforcement in Pennsylvania. We already heard from one who were on the ground that day, not part of the Secret Service, but they were under the direction of the Secret Service that day. What additional information are you hoping to hear from these witnesses?
Well, I think what will be interesting, Bree, what stood out to me in the witness list is there is no current member of the Secret Service who is taking part in this hearing today. The committee or the task force has been interacting with the Secret Service behind closed doors, has been getting information and trading paperwork with them. But I think hearing from the local police is going to stand out just because they're going to be able to talk about what type of coordination there was, as Angie was just alluding to. It very much seemed like, and I think the chairman of the task force, Mike Kelly, who represents Butler, Pennsylvania, said it ended up being a game of telephone because the local police and state police were even communicating on a different radio channel than the Secret Service. And so there was just a complete disconnect in communication. So I think it'll be interesting to hear from the local and state police who were there to hear more about their interactions or lack thereof with Secret Service as this task force tries to figure out how the Secret Service, this big agency, failed to not only prepare but then execute on that day. And then moving forward, if they have additional hearings, will we hear from a Secret Service official? As Angie alluded to, there's been a change in their leadership there, so they have a lot of questions that they have to answer.
And Angie, you have the Senate interim report that came out yesterday and the internal investigation. Where does everything stand with these other investigations?
Well, the interim report yesterday was pretty interesting in the fact that they said the number of failures that they saw in communication with local law enforcement, as well as coordinating law enforcement with law enforcement, which is some of the people that they're talking to right now during this hearing, remain unaddressed. Of course, that's a problem because Trump's campaign announced just yesterday that they're going to be heading back to that Butler site for an event on October 5th. We asked both the Trump campaign and the Secret Service whether or not they thought the Secret Service could adequately protect Trump, given the multiple security concerns that they sort of uncovered after this July 13th incident took place, and neither of them responded to our request for comment. Bree.
All right, Angie, and very quickly, Taylor, as we mentioned, there's already been huge adjustments to the Secret Service since that first assassination attempt, but then we had the second. Is the Secret Service stretched too thin?
Agency has said as much, especially in the height of a presidential campaign. I've been traveling with some of the candidates, including Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance recently. He has a very enlarged Secret Service detail and motorcade that's traveling with him. Former President Trump has an even larger one. President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, Governor Tim Walz, her running mate. So the Secret Service is stretched thin. Congress just approved an additional $231 million to help fund the agency, but that only covers part of the problem. Staffing is their biggest issue, especially in this politically tense and heightened threat environment. And so I think Secret Service is probably not looking forward to having Trump return to Butler, Pennsylvania next week, but hopefully it will be safe and hopefully they'll have much better communication than we saw. But it's an unprecedented time in terms of these threats right now and the pressure on this agency over it.
All right, Taylor Popolars, thank you very much. And Angie Gonzalez, thank you very much. Once again, you've been watching a bipartisan congressional task force holding its first hearing on the July 13th assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. We thank you so much for watching. I'm Bree Driscoll. More news right now here on Spectrum News.
Resources requested by the Secret Service.